When I was called here to United Church in Walpole back in 2016, I knew we had our work cut out for us. And it wasn't just my opinion, it was actually a fact. I knew this because the church had hired a consulting firm, Holy Cow Consulting, great name by the way, to survey the congregation and do a deep dive assessment back in 2014. Now, that was exactly 10 years ago. And when I was preparing for today's worship service, I actually pulled up the results to that survey and reread Holy Cow's analysis. And I'm going to share a little bit of it with you today. Now, some of you know all this, but for some of you, especially maybe our newer members, you may be shocked. This was United Church in Walpole 10 years ago. 78% of church members were to some degree dissatisfied with how things were going at the church. According to Holy Cow benchmarks, this was considered very low overall satisfaction. 96% of the church members felt to some degree like people were just going through the motions and there wasn't much energy in the church. Holy Cow considered that very low energy. The church was losing overall attendance at a rate of 10% per year. Now, Holy Cow didn't say it, but the writing was on the wall. That's considered free fall in the church world. And what was driving so much of this low satisfaction and low energy? Well, when Holy Cow peeled back the onion, they discovered that most members thought there was, quote, a disturbing amount of conflict at our church, end quote. United Church in Walpole in 2014 was in trouble. It was depressed. It had low self-esteem. It saw itself as a high conflict, low energy church. Now, I bring this up not to dwell on the past, which I know carries a lot of pain for folks, but I bring it up because I think it's actually really important to look in the rear view mirror sometimes, just so that you can realize how far you've come, how much you've grown, how much healthier you've learned to be, how much you've achieved for the sake of God's kingdom. And United Church in Walpole, you've come a very, very, very long way from that church that existed here in 2014. Truthfully, I don't even recognize the church described in this report. The church I know today is actually considered one of the most vibrant, welcoming, and energetic churches in the United Church of Christ. We may not be the biggest, but we pack a big punch. And did you know that? Did you know that you all are considered a beacon? Did you know that you're a model for others, a pillar? Did you know that people come here from across the country to learn from us? They call me up and ask me all kinds of questions. Actually, a pastor from Oregon is coming to visit us just next week. You'll meet her in worship. Her name is Robin. So quite literally, you've gone from depressed to destination in just 10 years. So how'd y'all do it? How did God do it through you? Well, the story really begins when you all were blessed to land Reverend Tony Kill as your interim pastor. Now, Tony had already been serving you for about a year when Holy Cow took that survey, but he was just getting started. He would serve here for 2 more years, and in that time, he did an enormous amount of repair work, healing work, teaching work, and you all worked with him. You didn't resist, or at least didn't resist too much. You allowed yourselves to learn, to be healed, to make new pathways in your hearts and in your spirits. And many of us know Reverend Tony Kill just passed away, and so it is with great joy that we lift up his work among you today. And while this holy work was happening, your search committee was looking for your next settled minister. and they had a tall order. Like so many churches in obvious decline, your stated goals, which you emphatically delivered to Holy Cow consultants, were as follows. Number 1, make necessary changes to attract families with children and youth to our church. Number 2, develop and implement a comprehensive strategy to reach new people and incorporate them into the life of the church. Number 3, develop the spiritual generosity of the people to financially support the ministry of the church. Those were the 3 big goals. In other words, stop us from dying. Our age tells us we're dying. Our numbers tell us we're dying. Our money tells us we're dying. Turn it around. That was the felt need, and that was the assignment. And so you did what any rational church would do in that position. You hired a 29-year-old woman with 0 experience from New York City. And I'm very grateful that you did. But not everyone thought it was a great idea, that's for sure. And I'll tell you, reading those Holy Cow reports, I don't know if I thought it was a great idea at times. But I want you to know that a lot of churches out there are dying. And a lot of churches say they want young families, more people, and more money coming in. That's so common, it's essentially a stereotype. But when push comes to shove, most dying churches are unwilling to change in the ways they would need to in order to achieve their stated goals. It's sort of like a smoker that knows it's bad for them to smoke, but they just won't quit. Many churches hold tight to deadly habits, even when they don't actually want to die. It's that holding 2 things at the same time. So a lot of people have asked me, how did you know that United Church in Walpole would be different than all those other churches? How did you know that this community was going to be willing to change enough to turn themselves around? And the answer I always give is this. I knew as soon as they offered a 29-year-old woman with 0 experience the job, because the proof was in that pudding. It was a huge leap of faith for you all to call me here. And it proved to me that this was a congregation willing to take leaps of faith. And that's essential. That's the essential practice for thriving on God's vine. And so for the last 8 years together, we have rolled up our sleeves. We've gotten to work. We've been going 100 miles an hour, turning our church around, bringing it back to life. And it has not been easy, but we've done it together. Yes, at about 100 miles an hour. And I say that to you today because I want you to know that I know how hard it has been at times. I know how exhilarating it has been at times. And I know how dizzying it has been at times. I know. I see it too. I feel it. Paul, in his letter to the Ephesians today, this church out in Ephesus, he told that church to run in the direction God has called them. Don't even walk, he said. Don't mosey, don't stroll, but run. Now, I don't think running hard is how God wants us to always be, to always live. But for everything, there is a season. And for the Ephesians, and for us, we've been running through a season of hard running away from death towards life and hope, running away from depression towards energy and vitality, running away from patterns of conflict toward patterns of unity in purpose and love. And I'm so proud of us for the race we've run. We have recaptured the mission of what it means to be a church. It's not a club for insiders and members, but it's a radical place of radical hospitality with an outward focus. We are reaching out and changing lives with the good news of God's love. We've done that here. We've tried and tried and tried again to develop 21st century kids and youth ministry that sticks and that matters to families. And our beloved Jazz has taken us so far in recent years towards this goal. We've grown in numbers and generosity, welcoming guests with what we pray they feel as the warm love of God. We've raised over $2.4 million and renovated our entire church building after living through the roof caving in twice and a never-ending deluge of deferred maintenance issues coming home to roost. We've done that. We developed a new economic plan, stewarding our real estate and investment resources to work for us now and into the future. We spent 3 years rewriting our bylaws and changing our church's governance structure to match our church's size and stated goals. We've put the structure in place to run this next race. We followed God's call and made new ministries and programs, and we said thank you and goodbye to those we let go. We experimented again and again and again. We failed fast, which I love to say, and we pivoted. We made it through COVID and learned a lot about engagement, loneliness, and what matters most in the process. We also learned how to do Zoom. We invested in our technology infrastructure and communications platforms, building a new website, bringing us into a new church management platform called Breeze, and transitioning all of our financials to QuickBooks Online, installing our AV system in the sanctuary. We've done all of this and so much more. It's honestly hard for me to remember all the things we've done. There has been so much. But like I said, looking in the rearview mirror gives you the perspective that you need sometimes to see how far you've come. The rate of change you see behind you is a good indicator of what you can expect in the future. I love a good delta variable. It gives me hope. And so it is with so much joy and so much pride that I share with you today my belief that as of this year, as of 2024, 2025, we have finally turned our beloved United Church in Walpole around. There's no more revitalizing work to do. We are vital. There is no more saving work to do. We have been saved by the grace of God. There's no more death spiral to haul ourselves out of. This church is very much alive. So starting today, we are poised to just run. Not at 100 miles an hour anymore, but at a steady jog, constantly moving forward at a sustainable pace, constantly making tweaks and changes as we grow. I'm so excited to see how far we'll go, to see how many people will reach with the good news of God's love, because this race before us is hard, but not as hard as the race behind us. And we're ready for it. This next race will be more of a marathon than a sprint. But we need to be prepared for what this next race is. We need to know the layout and the landscape, the strategy for it, so that we can run it with unity. That's why I believe the time is right this year in 2025 to begin a congregation-wide visioning process to determine the scope of the next 5 to 10 years together, to see the goalposts, to dream the dreams that are deep within us collectively. I can't wait for this process to begin. You'll be hearing more about it in the next few months. And there will be opportunities and requests for everyone to participate in all kinds of ways. We need you for this next moment. In just a minute, I'll be turning things over to some of our members and friends who will be sharing just how much the ministries we do here together has meant to them. You'll be seeing the proof in that pudding. But before I do, I want to close by saying thank you. Thank you for taking a chance on a 29-year-old with zero experience. Thank you for rolling up your sleeves alongside her. Thank you for running so hard, even when you hated it, even when you couldn't see the finish line, even when you were tired. Thank you for showing up heart and soul for God in Jesus. Thank you, thank you, thank you.